spent 5 years dwelling on the old financial system and trying to fix it. But this week here in Oxford, I've been at a conference at the Said Business School which is looking at the future of finance. It's fascinating. There's a whole new economics growing based on how people actually interact with each other rather than on maths and equations, and it implies a whole new financial system.
Basic principles are starting to come out of the work, including a need for designing robustness into the system. We can't prevent future crises entirely, but we probably can make the system more robust the way engineers make bridges and buildings more robust in the face of shocks. Second, to make them more adaptable in the face of change. We saw with tremendous innovation in the financial system that the regulatory framework was not able to adapt and keep up. And then third and finally is a financial system built taking into account the real behavior of real people. So understanding how consumers and banks actually behave and constructing a system built for that rather than some idealized world.
Technology and disintermediation have allowed all kinds of new forms of finance. Think of standalone payment systems on your phone or of crowdsourcing for loans. But can we really leave all of this to the market? Shouldn't government be giving this a nudge? Emma Vartolomei has produced her own map of the new finance.
The market is creating a solution, and the market is creating an alternative financial system, and the people are working out there in order to come up with new forms of finance. You can call them financial innovation, but I know that this is not such a nice concept currently in the way people are perceiving things, but it is innovation in financial services. And I believe that invisible hand is already there and is already creating a different system, which intrinsically it's more stable than the centralized one because it's an ecosystem-like.
But there are still a lot of problems. Big banks are well entrenched, and oddly, they are even more entrenched now than they were before the crisis.
I think that the very large banks that we have today are no longer adapted ideally to providing the services that they provide in a risk-adjusted, cost-effective way. But the reason that they exist is through a series of probably unintended consequences. They profit from an enormous subsidy in terms of the cost of the credit and capital that overwhelms the disadvantages of the complexity and the additional risks of the complexity that these large institutions incur. If you take away that massive incentive to be large, maybe mitigate against it if you can't remove it, and then I would say I would definitely agree and highly endorse a vast liberalization of the ability to create new banks. I'm not saying, and by the way, I don't think anyone could set up a new bank and tomorrow have a $10 trillion balance sheet. But you can set limitations both in terms of size of balance sheet, complexity of offering that are scaled, that allow for a lot of innovation.
This is all very exciting, but will a new atomized financial world really work? Don't we need to talk to each other? After all, even JP Morgan himself said that trust was more important to him than all the bonds in Christendom.
We have introduced a code of ethics. It does include the equivalent of a Hippocratic oath. The Chartered Institute of Securities and Investment in this country have actually introduced an examination, a compulsory examination, by the way, in ethics and ethical standards. And among other things, it includes penalties and exclusions for those who breach this.
Something is happening, and the old model, which doesn't work, needs to change. That means that we need to start experimenting with new models now, and that of course entails the risk that things will go wrong. But the way to proceed is to start building now and to correct mistakes as they arise, not let the new institutions get too big to fail, just like the old ones were in 2008. This is John Authers for the Financial Times in Oxford.